Time now for the Historic Racing News Podcast. Here is your host, Paul Tarsey.
Greetings, and welcome to the show. We've had a very, very busy time one way and another, and there's a lot for us all to talk about. I have been dining with the great and the good, once at the Royal Automobile Club in Pall Mall in central London, but more of that a bit later. And I am joined by my regular co-hosts, Jim Roller and Paul Jurd, who I hope are going to let me continue to brag about my highfalutin lifestyle.
I can't remember you ever needing our permission before.
Say, it's making a big deal. I thought you always dined with the great and the good.
Yeah,
I am. We call you the Baron for a reason.
Because I was also invited to a dinner at the Bluebird restaurant in Chelsea for a celebration of the centenary of a very special event in the history of the land speed record.
To go to. That one I'm jealous of. You can have your Pall Mall. I'll take the Bluebird.
Well, I caught up with Don Wales. Well, it's a lovely Wednesday afternoon, and I'm sitting in the sunshine in Chelsea. There probably aren't many better places to be right now, but it's a very special event because I've just walked past a rather gorgeous car in the forecourt of the Bluebird Cafe in Chelsea, and I'm talking to Don Wales, who is the grandson of Sir Malcolm Campbell, and that's perhaps just a little bit of a clue as to why we're here. But Don, tell us about what it's all about.
Well, we're here today at the Bluebird restaurant to start the celebrations of the 100th anniversary of my grandfather breaking the 150 mile an hour mark back in 1925 in the glorious Sunbeam 350 horsepower car.
And it's no coincidence that we're sitting outside the Bluebird restaurant, because that's not just a play on the name and the words. This has a history itself.
Well, the history about the Bluebird restaurant here is that it used to be the Bluebird garage, and we believe that my grandfather's obviously breaking records and driving a Bluebird car at Brooklands in the early 1900s, 1915 to 1930 odd, but he was using the name Bluebird. This building was built in 1924 or so we think the inspiration came from my grandfather for this building to be named Bluebird, which was the first purpose-built garage, I believe, in the world.
In terms of selling cars, presumably?
No, it was actually a filling station, but it was actually for the gentry of the day who had their motor car, and if they were having a day out or an evening out in the West End, their driver would take them up to the West End Theatre, and then they would come back here to the Bluebird garage and valet the car, fill it up with petrol. If necessary, there were rooms here for the chauffeur to stay the night as well. So it was, it was a place that your driver could come to get away from the West End, even though the West End is only, 10 minutes away.
And talking of names and the Bluebird name, that Sir Malcolm came upon the name Bluebird for his car really to do with Theatreland, didn't he?
Yes, there is a link there, you're right. He had a series of nicknames for his cars in the early 1900s, 1911, 1912. He was racing a car called Flapper 1 and Flapper 2, which was after a racehorse at the time. And it didn't give him the success that he craved. And then one night he is watching a play at the Haymarket Theatre called The Bluebird of Happiness, and he thought, what a fantastic, enchanting fairy story. And it's about children looking for this elusive bird of happiness that's just out of your reach. And by the end of the play, they realise that the happiness is inside them, and it's up for them to live a good, happy life with this bird always within inside them. And Malcolm thought, I'm going to call my car Bluebird. Went home, woke up the local ironmongers, or I think they were called an oil chandlery in those days, and he bought every tin of blue paint that he could find, mixed it all up into a blue colour, painted his car blue, took it to Brooklands, and with the paint still wet apparently, he then christened it Bluebird. It was 2 words in those days, and apparently won his first race. So the legend was born then.
And am I right in saying that it was Bluebird with Sir Malcolm, and that your Uncle Donald made it Bluebird one word? Is that right?
Absolutely right. Yes, Donald, for whatever reason, merged the two together, and I think it made it more distinctive, perhaps, that this is a new generation. We modernised the name. I don't know. No, grandfather was always 2 words, but with Donald, it was very definitely 1 word for both his car and his boat.
Now, the car that we can see parked on the forecourt here, it's unthinkable that back in the 20s he was doing 150 miles an hour. Tell me a bit more about that record attempt.
Well, grandfather was racing at Brooklands, and he witnessed Lee Guinness breaking the land speed record in that Sunbeam on the circuit at Brooklands at 129 miles an hour, whatever it was. And he thought, what a great thing to do. He wanted to be the fastest man in a motor car. So he eventually acquired the Sunbeam from the Sunbeam Motor Company and tweaked it. But it took him 4 goes at 4 different venues to get the record. I say 4 different venues, 4 different attempts. He went twice to Saltburn Sands in Yorkshire, and he went twice to Farno Beach in Denmark to break the record. And each time he was thwarted by the wrong timing equipment, or the timing equipment not working, despite going faster than the record in those days. And there was an unfortunate incident in Denmark where a tyre came off the car and bounced into the crowd and injured and killed a young boy, which had a lasting effect on my grandfather. But it sort of highlighted the dangers of record breaking. And then he went to Pendine Sands in South Wales, and in 1924 beat the record by the smallest of margins available in those days at 146. And then a year later, with some more tweaks to the Sunbeam, achieved this magical figure of 150. And it was that 150 mile an hour record that seemed to have sort of captured the public's and the press imagination, because from that moment onwards, people were really sort of attracted by who is the fastest man in a motor car now. And this battle went on with Parry Thomas and Henry Seagrave, and my grandfather, and then the Americans as well. But obviously Parry Thomas unfortunately got killed on Pendine, and then Henry Seagrave was killed in a boat attempt, and a couple of Americans were killed. So it really left the sort of playing field open for my grandfather to keep increasing the record bit by bit until he eventually got to 301 miles an hour in 1935.
Again, that is so incredibly fast and very, very dangerous, as we've heard, that people were dying. I don't know if it's appropriate to say left, right and centre, but they were. And I think something that we miss these days is the sheer bravery of people like Sir Malcolm, and that he was staring disaster in the face at every turn, wasn't he?
Absolutely. You asked me earlier about the Sunbeam. I was very fortunate to drive that 10 years ago on Pendine to celebrate the 90th anniversary of this record. And I was in awe of the man driving it, because we only did 50 miles an hour. And the car obviously wants to go faster, but we weren't allowed to go faster. And narrow tyres, no safety equipment whatsoever, no seat belt, no crash helmet. He had a leather flying hat and goggles, and he was wearing +4s and a jumper and tie with a shirt. And then when you look at the 300-mile-an-hour car, which was a 7-ton monster, he sat in the cockpit with these twin rear wheels right next to him. And I sat in that car for the first time, about 20 years ago. And you are acutely aware that the cockpit is right next to these twin rear wheels. And if you put your elbow out of the cockpit, you were on the wheels. They were that close. And his record in 35 to get the 301, he had burst tyres, he had boiling oil squirted into the cockpit from the engine, body panels ripped back, and he was very fortunate in a lot of his attempts that he didn't have more accidents, because he didn't have one or two. And a lot of people assume that he died from a car accident, but he didn't. He died in 1948 from a series of strokes, and died sort of semi-paralysed. So, the record breaking didn't get him, but ill health did.
And obviously he handed that passion on to his son Donald, who went on to do all sorts of great things, both on land and water as well.
Yes, when grandfather passed away, the land speed record was long gone from him. John Cobb and George Easton were fighting for it, but he still held the water speed record, and the Americans were after it. And so Donald said to Leo Villa, the family mechanic, that we should go after the record to protect it and keep it away from the Americans. And Leo Villa said to him, Donald, it's a risky business, but once you start, you will not be able to stop. It's a bug, it'll get into you. But it took Donald 7 years to break his first record, and that anniversary is coming up next week as well.
Now, with Sir Malcolm, and you mentioned about keeping the record away from the Americans and those sorts of things. With Sir Malcolm, was he doing it for king and country?
Malcolm was immensely patriotic. He was very, very proud of his Scottish ancestry as well, and he thought that showing Britain at its finest with record attempts to encourage people to invest in Britain, to invest in the motor car and the motor industry. So yes, there was a certain element of him doing it for Britain, but I think the majority of it was he was a driven man and he wanted that record for himself. So whether it's a sort of 80% Malcolm Campbell and 20% for Britain, I don't know. I never met him, but I would guess that it was probably 70-30 or something, but he was very patriotic and wanted to show Britain at its best.
Congratulations on this event, that simply walking in and seeing the Sunbeam, the Bluebird Sunbeam parked there on the forecourt here gave me just a little bit of a lump in the throat and a tear in the eye, and that I'm desperately grateful to be here this afternoon. Don Wales, thank you very much indeed.
Paul, it's a pleasure to see you again as always, and you're right, it's a fantastic spot here, and a great event, and thanks for coming.
Now back to the Historic Racing News Podcast and Paul Tarsey.
Now, Paul Jurd, you have still been busy in your world of circuit commentary, I know. Where have you been since we last spoke?
God, dear, it's been hectic, to be quite honest. I had the honour of doing 2 days in the commentary box at Brands Hatch for the Masters Historic Festival there with Mark Werrell. So we commentated on a whole host of things, including their racing legends, basically the 3-litre Formula 1 cars. Although Mark and I did discuss actually the why on earth were we commentating while they were on track, because they sounded A, magnificent, and B, who was going to hear us anyway? Hope that was. So that was absolutely great fun. And I did a 6-hour race at Donington Park that was really good fun. I do like a good long race, so you get a bit of tactics creeping in. And that was absolutely cracking race. It was the Alans, the Lotus Alans, that lasted longest and came through to win that. And basically been really, really busy. Did 4 days, as we saw on the Facebook page, actually, at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, and was highly honoured to interview, if I do it in order, I think it was the Red Arrows. I did Mario Andretti. I did Jake Hill, the current BTCC champion. Carl Fogarty, who was an absolute delight to interview. Slightly off my comfort zone with 2 wheels rather than 4, but Carl was absolutely superb. And then on the Sunday, I did Mario Andretti. Sorry, Mario. And I mentioned Mario. Sorry, Nigel Mansell, my mate Nige, arm round Nige, just like in the pick. And finished off the day with John Barnard, the designer, who again was really, really good value. So yeah, it was a fantastic time, and look, just had a weekend off for a rest.
Jeez, you two clowns are killing me.
Well,
Unbelievable.
you mentioned,
and you have to mention Mario twice. My mistake. I mistook him for Nigel Mansell. Oops.
My mate Mario, we're like this. We are. He was sharp as a tack, I have to say, and an absolute delight to meet. What do you say? He's just one of the gods of our sport, isn't he? What else can you say?
Yeah, and I think that is it. That we have the privilege of talking to people who we look up to and who we hold in high esteem. But then you talk to Mario Andretti, and it's a bit like that. You mentioned, Paul, that you commentated on the Masters event, and there's been a few things happening at Masters of late, and one thing that I'm not going to let past is that Rachel Bailey has now moved on from Masters, and Rachel has been really doing the hard work at Masters for years. And when Fred Fatien took over the business, that Rachel said that she would settle everything down for a year, but then she was going to go and do different things, and that year is now up. So all credit to Rachel Bailey for a great job. And I have to tell you a story that when Ron Maiden was running Masters, I was talking to him about Rachel and so forth, and he said to me, "She and I are like a cappuccino. That she is all the taste and the hard work down at the bottom of the cup, and I'm just a tasteless froth."
Just the decorative part.
So I thought that was good. Great to hear that Masters are launching a turbo Formula One series. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think that's going to be exciting. They announced in an official, a very quiet announcement, actually. It was just a short press release that said, hey, coming to the grid in 2026, a turbo class, and more soon. And so that just kind of left it open to your imagination with all of the great cars, and that was a very potent era of Formula One. Just absolutely outstanding action and great designs. The computers hadn't come in yet in the CAD design, so a lot of these cars were being penned by some great designers, and they all look different still.
Yes.
It's interesting, actually. You said it was a short release. I've just checked, Jim. 6 sentences.
Yeah,
was all it took. A couple of them are quite long sentences, but 6 sentences. Yeah, you do wonder, where these cars are. I've seen some of them at shows and exhibition, but B, where the hell are the engines? Those were not long-lasting engines, were they? I know in the Masters Racing Legends at the moment there are some quiet little rules tucked away in there that are all about extending engine life and making life for easy. But aren't we talking there about the days of qualifying engines, race engines, and an engine would do just a race or two. I suspect no one's going to come out with a BMW cranked up to 1,500 brake horsepower, are they? The rate that would be, I'd pay for that.
And you might see a demonstration or two, but in reality, what you're probably going to see is some detuned engines. Yeah. But they're still going to sound the same. The racing will be great, and it will be nostalgia that will warm the cockles of our hearts. So,
but isn't it interesting that over the years, it's kind of moved up and up and up? In that, I can remember when Group C sort of ground to a halt, and everybody said, "Well, we'll never see Group C again, and we'll certainly never see something like the XJR14 or the Peugeots, because they're just too expensive and they're too complicated to run." And sure enough, a decade or so later, we were seeing all of those cars racing in historic racing, and that, I can remember when they were talking about those turbo cars and saying, well, nobody will ever be able to run them except for the factory teams because they're just too complicated. And the world's marched on, and it's brilliant news that we're going to see them out there. But it was a kind of taboo, a sort of turbo taboo that happened then. But now it's great, and all credit to Masters for doing it.
Yeah, but you're also going to see, with HSR here in the States, you're seeing some of the more modern cars. The Brad Kettler running the Audi R8. We've seen the Peugeot from 2009, and a lot of people are saying, well, how are they going to run these cars because of the computer technology and that sort of stuff? So that's going to be the next step from the sports car side. I remember beginning of this year we were lamenting and joking about how the Passport, the FIA Passport, now has cars from 2000, and we were all like, "Whoa, that's too young," and then we stopped and went, "Wait a minute, that's 25 years ago. That's a quarter of a century." So it's as we move on and the hair's gray and fall out or whatever they do. They shift from our head to our ears. I never understood that, but that's a different conversation. It just, this is the shape, and more power to them. They've obviously had some interest, and to Paul Jurd's point, there are obviously some engines and stuff out there. There must be people wanting to run, or an organization like Masters, which its constituency is the competitors, let's face it. If they didn't have interest, I don't think we'd be seeing in grids. So it's going to be fun to see just what and who shows up, and what we can get our friend Nick Padmore in and let him come and tell us about what kind of messy dreams we could be having.
Every time he's on, it's just life envy, isn't it, basically?
Yeah.
Well, between he and the Baron, I want to go slit my wrists most days. I'm kidding.
Well, we haven't mentioned for probably 5 minutes that Paul spoke to Mario Andretti. That we let that one just drop down.
Sorry, carry on, Jim. Yep.
Before we move on, though, we do have to report that Masters has had to cancel 2 events this year.
Yeah.
Because of back-to-back events scheduled for late October, the Dubai Autodrome and Gulf Historic Grand Prix Revival at Yas Marina have both been canceled. And in an official statement, and I'm quoting here, despite our meticulous planning, unforeseen logistical complications have arisen that may compromise the timely delivery of cars and equipment to the UAE. After careful evaluating all possible solutions, we have come to the difficult decision that cancellation is the most reasonable course of action, or responsible course of action. I'm sorry, I misquoted that. Both to protect the experience of our competitors and to uphold the standard of excellence our events are known for. While this decision was not made lightly, it opens the door to hopefully things even better. Interesting, gentlemen, though, the Yas Marina event that's in conjunction with the Formula One finale, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, will go forward. And this announcement came out about the time that things were getting very iffy in the Middle East with the bombing of the Iran nuclear program and that sort of stuff. So one wonders if there are better security guarantees when you are teamed up with a Formula One event that has government sponsorship and is there at the behest of the UAE, as opposed to adventuring down to those regions on your own.
Can I just say, having written press releases for people for many years, that was a gem. Someone needs a raise for writing that, because it effectively took quite a while to not say at all why, but also covered all the bets and hinted at a few things as well. So, yeah, hats off to someone for knocking that one out.
Well, yeah, exactly. And anybody with half a brain knows why they did it. It's for safety, and more power to them.
Yeah,
and a lot of people wouldn't have the guts to make that decision, I think, and that takes some stones.
And to make that decision early before people are probably committed to costs, etc., etc.
That's exactly right.
Jim, you do realise what you have done by just talking about the Masters there. I have to say, Paul Jurd spoke to Mario Andretti.
Again.
Ladies and gentlemen, they say good things are worth waiting for. We have waited, and we now have with us the 1978 Formula One World Champion, 4 times champion in the Premier US series of single-seaters. From 1965 was his first championship, 1966, when he led 1,000 laps more than any other driver. 1969 champion, 1984 champion. This man has won the Indianapolis 500, the Daytona 500, the Sebring Arrows 3 times, Daytona 24 Hours Pipe Speed. Ladies and gentlemen, Mario Andretti.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I thought it was worth the build-up. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Mario, fantastic career. If we just rewind it to where back it started in 1960, you started actually racing on dirt track.
1959, yes. I was illegal because I needed to be 21, but my twin brother Aldo and I were only 19, and sort of we fibbed a bit, that we used to race in Italy and all that. We had all the experience, and so we started driving in 19, and my career started in 19, and my last professional race was in 2000 at 24 Hours of Le Mans. And again, I've been just the luckiest man alive to survive all those decades and accomplish more than I deserve, quite honestly. I've been with wonderful teams, obviously, and you need that. And it's been the most satisfying career you could ever imagine from my standpoint.
That period of time, you've driven so many different cars, but also the car technology had moved on so much from the early cars when you would have driven right up to the sports cars of the 2000s with ground effects, a lot of aerodynamics. You started off on the dirt tracks where the car is loose. Do you feel that car control was something that really helped all the way through your career?
Quite honestly, as a matter of fact, you probably find it hard to believe, but the dirt track driving style is always searching for grip. Really helped me in the wet races on the road courses, believe it or not. And some people will say, no, but bollocks. But it's very true in my opinion. And a lot of people thought, well, wait until there's a wet race. Well, I think I did quite well on the wet races. And I give credit to the opportunity I had on the dirt tracks. So anyway, but no matter what discipline you obviously attempt, you always learn something different, something new. The characteristic of the cars are obviously different. But you learn something that will help you on a big picture, and that's where I derived a lot of satisfaction. I was curious, obviously, and my objective was not just to drive a discipline that is not, basically my forte or my main effort, but I wanted to see if I could win. And that was the ultimate satisfaction for me.
You had those 2 USAC championships under your belt, and then there was that first Formula One drive in 1968 in the Lotus 49. First time in Formula One, the Lotus 49 iconic car. First time as well, Colin Chapman. How did that come about, and what was it like sitting into a Formula One car for the first time?
Well, actually, I got to know Colin Chapman along with Jim Clark in 1965, which was my rookie year at Indianapolis, where Jim won. I finished 3rd. And when we were saying our goodbyes after the traditional banquet, I told Colin, I said, Colin, someday I would like to do Formula One. And he said, Mario, when you think you're ready, you call me, and I will have a car for you. And 3 years later, I did exactly that. And true to his word, He said, okay. He said, we'll do the last race at in the Watkins Glen, in America, but you can test the car in Monza. And it was my first experience in a Formula One car. My other experience with a single-seater was with an Indycar, and I thought I went to heaven because the response and the agility of the Formula One car really suited me well. And in my very first attempt, the first race, I put the car on pole, and next to me was Jackie Stewart, which that again, to me was something that I could not believe myself. But my introduction to Formula One was exactly so positive, and so again, it was more than I expected, and it makes you feel like then you belong there. It gives you that confidence.
I can't believe you never had the confidence that you didn't belong there. But your Formula One, your career, for many seasons was never a full season. It was bits and pieces, including your first races with Ferrari. First time you raced a Works Ferrari, you actually won the race in the Works Ferrari. Again, Colin Chapman, suddenly Ferrari and Enzo Ferrari. You were driving for the big teams.
Well, yes. I mean, when I was introduced to Formula One, like I said, was in '68, and but I was contracted in the Indycars, and I was offered a drive with Lotus, and actually Emerson Fittipaldi, I couldn't do it. So Emerson Fittipaldi is the one that got my ride. And then later on, even with Ferrari, when I won South Africa, then I won the Equestria Grand Prix in America. And again, I was offered a drive there, but I couldn't at the time, actually. Even financially, I couldn't afford it at the time. I was doing pretty well in the States, and Formula One was not as
as rewarding
yes. Financially as it is today. And but anyway, I knew that somewhere throughout my career, I would have to dedicate my main effort to Formula One, and to reunite with Colin Chapman in 1976 was a total blessing for me.
I was going to say that was the full circle round, and suddenly Colin Chapman, and then at some point Colin says, I've got this idea. And you were in one of the very, very first ground effects cars.
Yes.
We know we've got ground effects in Formula One now, but this was totally new technology back in the 70s. And suddenly this car would go around the corner quicker than you would probably ever have gone around the corner in Formula One. How was that, getting used to that, and also just convincing yourself that you could go that quickly?
Well, quite honestly, if the car is capable, it's easy to get used to it. As a driver, any aid to go quicker through the corners is something that you welcome. And of course, the age of ground effects obviously pretty much revolutionized not only Formula One, but motor racing in general, because it's used throughout, sports prototypes and so forth. So it's actually downforce without the price of drag. That's a beautiful thing. And so again, we were with Lotus. We were the ones that actually the first ones to discover that, and again, it just paid off greatly for us. So it was tremendously satisfying. That's what I loved about those decades, because there was so much to be learned yet, and you just always look forward to a breakthrough, and whether it's aerodynamics, suspension dynamics, tire construction, anything like that to just make the car go quicker. It was just, to me, again, it was just like every year, you're like a waiting father for a child, a new child coming through. I wondered how this would, not all of them, however, were as healthy as you expect. Some had cross-eyed and one leg shorter than the other, but most of the cars were better, were an improvement from one year to the next, which is a big thing. On the same rules, by the way.
I was going to say, you always had a reputation, actually, for being a good engineer, a good setter-up of a car, able to give the team that feedback. So obviously, that worked with Chapman, etc. Is that, again, through your career? I believe even until not that long ago, you were testing cars for people just to give that feedback on setup.
Well, yes. The one thing, quite honestly, that I learned very early in my career that the more you understand the dynamics of a car, what you need, the better you can help yourself. Because obviously, the easier you can drive the car, the faster you're going to go. So I found that an element of total interest to me to really learn the what actually the geometry of suspension and all that sort of thing, what that happens, like roll centers, front to rear, blah, 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 blah. And then experimenting with that. I love to test a lot, obviously. In those days, we did do a lot of testing. And again, I think that knowledge paid me back very well.
Over the years, obviously, you've had an awful lot of teammates, awful lot of people you've been driving the same car, competing against. But is there anyone back across all those years that you remember most fondly as your teammate?
Well, probably the closest one that I had, especially in Formula One, we were just friends, not just teammates. It was Ronnie Peterson. He was like a family member, even like a brother. And so it was as sad a situation as you could imagine when we lost him under the circumstances that we did. But again, I always got on quite well, with my teammates. Even my own son in IndyCar, believe it or not.
I was about to say,
I loved when I beat him, though.
And how did he feel about that?
Even his mother, his mother didn't like that. Said, "He's your son, Mario. Come on." I said, "Yeah, well."
I was going to say, if you wanted to keep the family thing, of course, you had 3 Andrettis in a Porsche at Le Mans, and in a way, Le Mans is almost the only thing missing, I think, from your CV.
Well, a lot of people don't know, but I did win Le Mans in 1995. We finished second overall, first in class. Now, if class win doesn't count, then, we were first in class, and obviously, there was a penalty throughout the race, actually, while we were sleeping, and Eric Hillary was one of the drivers with me, and I invited him to Indianapolis, believe it or not, this year. And he revealed to me something that I didn't know, that during the night we had some issues, and I made up a lot of time and so forth. And then there was a body piece that fell off the car, and they gave us a penalty that kept us in the pits for 10 minutes, not 10 seconds, 10 minutes. And we lost the race by 3.8 minutes, later on. So, as you can see, but we won class. So I claim I have a first place trophy for Le Mans.
And that's the set, and that's going to do. Thank you. I was going to say very quickly. Sorry, excuse me.
What? It was class. It was not overall, but it was class.
That'll do. That's the set complete. Again, before I will be throwing questions out to the floor. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will a quick chance to throw a few questions at Mario. But I'm going to throw one finally. Again, over the years, so many cars. Any cars that you look back on fondly? Any cars that you were happy never to see the back of again?
Well, there was only one car that I felt it was the worst racing car that I ever sat in. There was a Can-Am car called the Honker, called the Honker, and it was. I'm not going to even tell you who designed it, but he was a Brit. Great man, but I think he has some bad dreams.
Great man, bad car.
Bad dreams when he designed that car, and but for the rest of it, some cars are better than others, but overall, again, no complaints, really. Just that was always a challenge, because I like to, as I told you, to test the different disciplines. And but again, each car, you learn something new, and you learn how to be versatile, how to accommodate the characteristics. So I think it expanded your knowledge overall. So I derived not only a lot of fun doing that, but satisfaction more than anything.
Obviously, your grandson Marco is racing right today. I've suddenly had this picture of you guys all round the table, and there is going to be one topic of conversation, isn't it? And that's just going to be racing in the Andretti household.
I think you can guess correctly on that one. It could be boring for a lot of people, but that's all we know.
I'd accept an invite today. Ladies and gentlemen, does anyone have a question for Mario Andretti? We've got the radio mic. Please hold the mic nice and close, if you will, please.
Hello there. Obviously, you can see there's a lot of stuff going on in Formula One at the minute. So I was just interested in who you thought was the best F1 driver in the last decade, in the last 10 years.
Oh, tricky question. Best F1 driver in the last decade?
Well, you mean that I raced against or overall?
Just generally in the last 10 years.
Well, the last 10 years, I mean, it has to be Max Verstappen right now. I mean, I think with Michael Schumacher, the run that he had was just amazing. I just wish he wouldn't have gone to Mercedes after that, because it showed that he was human after all, you know, when the car wasn't quite there. But with Ferrari, he was performing miracles. And look what Max has done. I mean, there's several that, you know, multi-world champions. But I think right now Max Verstappen is head and shoulders above the rest, in my opinion, talent-wise.
Fantastic. Any more questions? Gentlemen, I'm right here, so let's go for this one.
You're one of a few great drivers to be successful in both series. What did you find the biggest difference between IndyCar and Formula One when you started? And seeing as you're still involved now to an extent, what do you think the biggest difference is now between IndyCar and Formula One?
Well, you have to realize the difference between the two series is a lot of the different rules, you know, and so you cannot compare the two, because the IndyCar is basically heavier by rule, because the car undergoes a lot more stress on the high ovals, on the high bank ovals and so forth, and when you corner 245 miles an hour, where you don't do that in Formula One, so the car has to be stronger to be able to withstand that loading. So you cannot really compare that in that respect. They're both single-seaters, but they're two different animals, if you will. Now, as far as a driver is concerned, when it comes to a road course, the agility of the Formula One car is obviously, there's no contest, because that's what it's designed exactly for. An IndyCar on a road course doesn't brake as well and accelerate because it's heavier. You see what I mean? So it's like I said, it's the same thing like people say, well, look at the pit stops in Formula One, 2.4 seconds, 1.9 seconds. Well, they got 15 guys around there, you know. And like in IndyCar, you got one guy versus 5 that do the job in Formula One. So it's all about rules, the rules, you know what I mean? So it's difficult to compare one series versus the other because the rules are different.
Ladies and gentlemen, any more questions? Sorry, gentlemen, yes, take the gentleman in the hat, then we've got one just off to my left.
Here we are celebrating 75 years of Formula One, and you've been iconic through much of it, a lot of it. And I'm curious if you can say anything about your own journey to field your Formula One team.
Oh, as far as fielding, yeah. Well, this has been something of interest to my son more than anything. As you can see historically, that was not my objective. Driving was really what I wanted to do. And so we're still involved in the Formula One effort, obviously, but Michael chose to step aside. So I'm in there, but I don't want to be part of the makeup and all of the intense organizing of everything. And I'm basically as an advisor when it comes to drivers. You know, if the bosses ask me, okay, what's your opinion, I will give my opinion. That's really what it is, you know, that's my function. And the fact that my son Michael started this whole idea makes me very proud, because if you look at his history as a team owner, you know, he delved into several disciplines with great success, you know, and so again, I'm proud of what he has done so far, but now he wants to lead the good life. I don't blame him. Actually, I should be doing the same, but I have more fundamental love for the sport than actually he does, and he knows that. And you know, like I said, I live for the sport, and that's the way it will be until they put me in a box, and that box better have wheels on it, and a steering wheel.
We have the gentleman there who's patiently waited to ask a question. Mike is right behind you.
Yes. How did you first meet Enzo Ferrari?
When did I first meet him?
And how?
I met him in 1969 in Monza, when I was driving 1,000 Ks with my teammate was Chris Amon, and I was fairly new, you know, in that respect, even a sports car, but I had already won, you know, a couple of races like a Sebring and so forth, and Chris Amon was very, very quick, and so anyway, I'll just tell you quickly. I wanted to be quicker than Chris to impress Mr. Ferrari, and during practice I crunched the car just a little bit, and I figured, oh man, I better have my return ticket to all Italia, you know. But when I pulled back into the pits, you know, he had his classic hand on his vest like this, and he had a slight smile on his face, and I learned later why. He never faltered a driver that really wanted to give 100%. If you made a mistake, at least you tried. And he was a real racer. And the fact that I dealt with him directly with all of my experiences with Ferrari, even to the very last experience in 1982 with when I substituted Didier Pironi in Monza. He obviously was, for me, Enzo Ferrari was bigger than life, you know, the Enzo Ferrari, Colin Chapman. These are personalities that were the giants of the sport. And again, they had, you know, just motor racing in their veins, you know, and that's what I loved about that.
I was going to say that you had a lot of success in sports cars with Ferrari, Daytona 24 hours, Sebring 12 hours. As you said, your very last Formula One Grand Prix was in a Ferrari.
Yes.
You were born in Italy. Were these drives a financial decision, or was there a little bit of emotion going on that I'm driving for Ferrari?
No question. I mean, I was in Italy until I was 15 years old before we immigrated to the States. And as you can see, Formula One was very young. I was 10 years old when Formula One became official in 1950. And who was the first Italian world champion? Alberto Ascari. In 1952 and 53, I was 12 and 13 years of age. I mean, it was easy for me to gravitate to someone like Ascari, and he was my inspiration, 100%. At the beginning, you know, as a child, I said, oh my God, if I could just be like Alberto Ascari. And you know that in life, it's amazing how life goes. When posthumously, Ascari was inducted into the International Hall of Fame in America, and they asked me to present the trophy, and I was inducted there 2 years before him, not posthumously, but
before the great Alberto Ascari.
Alberto Ascari. But the point I'm making, I mean, just the fact that you know, you run full circle. Can you imagine? You know, I'm in the same Hall of Fame as Alberto Ascari. You see what I mean? These are the things in life that are so precious.
I was going to say,
but I was, you know, to answer your question, you can just imagine, you know, how I felt about just even driving for Ferrari.
your career overlapped that of so many other good drivers. Was there ever anyone that if you looked at the grid sheet, you saw there alongside you on the grid, you thought, he's good, I'm going to have to work hard today? Or were you always that confident that you had the tools underneath you to do what you needed to do?
No, there's always somebody better than you. There's always, as far as, the challenge is always there, and...
I am expecting you to name names here.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Who were the drivers that you really respected?
Many, of course. Almost every decade has that hero, someone there. And like my first experience in Formula One, to put the car on pole, my first race, who was next to me? Jackie Stewart. I mean, that's the biggest payoff you could ever have. You see what I mean? It's when you win a race, the meaning of that win is who finishes behind you. And sometimes when you finish second, who actually won. So sometimes finishing second to someone of that caliber is a hell of a good day also. You see what I mean? That's how you always try to measure up with the best. I wonder if I could ever reach that level. And then sometimes if things go your way, oh my goodness, maybe I belong in this game. You see what I mean? It gives you that confidence. And these are the individuals that you look up to, because they're the ones that obviously are making noises week in and week out.
I think you're being very generous there, because I think an awful lot of drivers would have measured themselves up to you. Ladies and gentlemen, there is only one, and it is Mario Andretti.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to the Historic Racing News Podcast, a copyrighted presentation of historic racing news in association with White Squirrel Studios. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or usage without the expressed written permission of Historic Racing News is strictly prohibited.
My work the last month, guys, has been a little bit more behind the scenes than out front, like you two chaps doing interviews with big stars like Mario Andretti and Nigel Mansell and going to the RNC
Has Paul
Club.
spoken to Mario Andretti?
I think somebody did recently. I can't remember who.
Best buds, tell you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I did get to talk to one of my good friends, and that was Tim Mayer, who has thrown his hat in the ring for presidency of the FIA, and he's going to stand in that election. If you were listening to the RSL network in July, you heard this interview, but it was so important, we felt that we wanted to reprise it a little bit. Here are some of the clips of what Tim had to say. But why have you taken this decision at this point?
Well, infamously or famously, Mohammed fired me as a steward back in November of last year. I had devoted about 15 years to the FIA, probably over 100 days a year on average, all volunteer work. As a steward, as a race director, on numerous commissions and committees, and as a member of the World Motorsport Council. It gave me an opportunity to reflect. What's important to me? Why did I dedicate this much time? And, motorsport has been very good to me. I've done well over the years. My family has done well over the years in motorsport. And I love being able to give back. I love being able to be involved with the people, the quality of people that are involved in motorsport. And as I thought about the way the FIA was being run, or in my belief, mismanaged, it really concerned me that if somebody didn't run, the FIA is going to be in real trouble. I think it's in trouble now. I think it's going to get worse, not better. And I think it's really important that somebody who has professional qualifications, somebody who has a dedication to this, somebody who has integrity more than anything else, stands and challenges Mohammed and provides for the member clubs, who are the people who elect in this case, an opportunity, a different option. So we thought about it, my wife and I, for a couple of months. I then started consulting with some other people and talking to them and saying, what do you think? And the support that we got was overwhelming. So ultimately, there was no one thing. There were a lot of people and a lot of voices that advised me and encouraged me. And that's why we decided to come out.
Well, and this is going to be cliche, but if there was ever a person that was born for this job, I think it may in fact have been you. You have been involved in every aspect of motorsports, from media. You've even been a television producer, which is where you and I first met.
Yep.
And then during the American Le Mans series, you were in my ear in a headset, and always calm, always, there's a certain amount of having put in that 10,000 hours on all aspects of the sport that I think can uniquely qualify a person. And at the risk of sounding obsequious, I think you're one of the few people, because there are others that would fall into that category. For our listeners, Tim, the FIA, is primarily about auto racing, but the FIA is much more than that. Can you give us a brief thumbnail of what else the FIA does and how you can influence that in a positive way?
I mean, this is a critical point. There are basically two parts to the FIA. There's mobility, and mobility is things like roadside assistance, it's road safety, it's sustainability, it's access to mobility, and it's all about human dignity around the world and creating opportunity for people around the world. So I actually think that mobility may be the bigger opportunity at the FIA. It's generally speaking been an underserved part of the FIA. It's a bigger opportunity to provide a lasting legacy for, not to be too grandiose, but all of mankind. That's a huge opportunity. The other side is the sports side, and the sports side basically is broken up into two categories. There's what you might call regional or club sport, which is where the individual member clubs, each country has a member club, runs the racing in its country. In the UK, the club's called Motorsport UK. In Australia, it's Motorsport Australia. In Germany, it's DMSB. In France, it's FFSA. Each country has its own club.
It's ACUS in America, right?
And it's the ACUS, which stands for the Automobile Competition Committee of the United States. Then there's this other part, which is the major championships of the FIA. There are 7 of these major championships across the world, spanning the world, and the FIA runs those. That's kind of a quasi-commercial operation that the FIA runs there, and it is what funds the rest of the FIA.
I'm old enough to remember the ebb and flow, for lack of a better term, of controversial and non-controversial FIA presidents. I came on the scene in the very late 70s and early 80s, and of course Jean-Marie Balestre tried to run things with an iron fist, but he ran into the diminutive Englishman by the name of Bernie Ecclestone, who said, "Not hold my beer." Max, who was not without his controversies at times, and then with Jean Todt, things seemed to level out, and now we're in a position where we have rulings that are coming down about cussing on the radio, and you have drivers who are now starting to band together. As a president, how do you go in and fix that lack of transparency? I mean, some of it is media just trying to be, disturb the, build the controversy and that sort of stuff. But some of these decisions from a fan and from someone who's been around racing a long, long time look fairly arbitrary to me.
I mean, first of all, the application of common sense goes a very long way. What I would say is this is significantly about power and the concentration of power into one man's hands. I think that is not right. The power of the FIA is baked into the regulations.
Right, sure. Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to demonstrate your power on a regular basis the way that he is. The thing that really disturbs me is that to me, it demonstrates a lack of respect. We're not talking kids at karting. We're talking about Formula One drivers who have had a remarkable career to get to where they are. And in my experience with drivers, universally, I actually sat with the Formula One drivers and said, hey guys, look, I'm sorry the way this has been handled. And I realized that for most of you, English is your second or third language. And when you learned English at the karting track at the age of 11 or 12, I am sure the F-bomb was the first word you learned. I get it. However, for the 30 minutes of the interview, the media interview, I think you can figure your way through this. And they all went, yeah, okay, fine. That kind of respectful, thoughtful, understanding dialogue, it doesn't matter if it's the drivers, it doesn't matter if it's the teams, it doesn't matter if it's the manufacturers and OEMs, it doesn't matter if it's the people investing in the sport, whether as a sponsor or as a investor on a team. To get the return on investment, you need a stable, calm, thoughtful regulator, not one that pulls the pin, throws the hand grenade in, and walks out going, ha ha. That's just, it's not good for the sport.
What is your vision for historic racing? We are Historic Racing News, so
yep.
What are your thoughts on historic racing?
Well, historic racing, I think, occupies a very unique niche in that the FIA has evolved cars as technology has evolved and so on. My vision is that we need to work very hard with the organizers, with the promoters, to ensure that we're using best practices for safety. Authenticity is fantastic. There is a place for replica cars. I think there is a place for all of those, as long as they're not trying to be passed off as the original.
Exactly.
Integrity and honesty about what the car is important. For me, the FIA's role is to focus on best practices. What can we do to run enjoyable events without it being unsafe? These historic cars, they are difficult. They're difficult to maintain. They bite. They're difficult to maintain. And as a sport, we cannot go backwards. I'm named after a racer who died in a race car. For me, that safety is paramount. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I say for me, for the FIA's principal role is to make sure that historic racing can happen safely, can happen in a way that entertains, but in a way that's also safe.
You said at your announcement at Silverstone that Mohammed had basically, he's kind of stacked the deck. They've made some rule changes and that sort of stuff. How do you cut through that, especially given his unlimited wealth to run a campaign?
Well, luckily, I have some, working backwards on that question, I have some supporters who have are like-minded and are helping me fund this campaign. The thing is that people are uneasy about the situation with Mohammed. They do get that the reputation of the federation is on the line, and they do get that this is unhealthy. But they haven't been offered a choice. This is retail politics, no different than running for mayor of a small town. And my job over the next 5 months is to go door to door, knock on doors, and say, hey guys, you can have a president who cares about your small business and who understands what it takes to build a karting track, or understands what it takes to build autocross, or understands what goes into a mobility business. We can provide you with that help that you need. We understand, and we're going to listen to you and listen to what you need. But you can also have a professionally run federation, one that attracts investment from sponsors and so on, rather than repels it. One that is a beacon of good governance, not centralizing power with one person, which is what it is, what's happening right now. I'll give you a sense of that. There are two world councils, one for mobility and one for sport. And I've sat on that motorsport council for, as the deputy for the U.S. for 16 years. Over that period of time, it was a debating body. It was a consultative body. It was kind of the last stop for regulations before they, went out to sort of the world. And that has changed. These members are supposed to represent the people that elected them. Well, now they're not even allowed to discuss the agenda of the meetings with the people that they represent.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time. I know you're busy. You're going to be knocking on doors. In closing, what's your biggest challenge? How are you going to pull this off?
Well, I've got a great team of people behind me. These are professionals that have run ASNs, which is the fancy name for a sport club. They've run mobility clubs. They've run ACNs, which are combined sport and mobility clubs. And they know what it takes to build these clubs. It's a matter of going and knocking on doors, as I said. It's a matter of going to the World Championship and having discussions with those constituents, having discussions with people. And as I say, talking about we can bring value to the small clubs. We can pay attention. We can hear them. And we can drive resources that they need to grow, while at the same time being a responsible, respected, thoughtful leader on the motorsport side in particular, but also in mobility, and be a federation that they can be proud of.
It's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? Because they talk about various politicians over the years who became prime minister or president or something simply because they weren't the other fella, and that Tim is in there with not being the other fella, and that certainly stands his corner well.
And I think he's coming out with a strong message. And I thought it was also interesting that shortly after Tim made his announcement, Sulliam backed up a little bit from such a heavy involvement in Formula One and appointed some people to be the face of that a little bit more and back him out a little bit, because he was getting so much pushback about things he was doing and making people angry.
You're listening to the Historic Racing News Podcast, a copyrighted presentation of historic racing news in association with White Squirrel Studios. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or usage without the expressed written permission of Historic Racing News is strictly prohibited.
We always talk about the season gaining momentum, and the season has well and truly gained all that momentum. September is going to be busy as well. We're here at the beginning of August, but September is going to be busy, and particularly busy with one of my favourite events of the year, for a reason I can't really tell you, and that's the Shere Hill Climb, which happens just outside Guildford in Surrey, in the south of England, on the 7th of September, on Sunday. Paul, you've been there, and it's just weird.
It's great, actually. I've been fortunate enough to it does sum it up, I suppose, but to work with you twice on the live commentary at the event. And one of the highlights is about 10 days before, isn't it, when you get the entry list through, and you scroll up and down the spreadsheet. Firstly, yes, it's a spreadsheet, so you've got to like that, but it's just the sheer eclectic. If you're going to laugh, you have to laugh out loud, gents, not silently. I saw that on the video feed. Thank you. But it's a whole variety. I was
looking for the pocket protector.
If you've got Excel, you've got a friend. That's what I say. But yeah, it is, because it's last year it was just everything, and it's essentially it's whatever the organising committee fancy seeing going up the hill, isn't it? There's no rhyme nor reason of it. And I remember last year I was going down the list, and there was a Ford Galaxy 500, and I thought, I know him because I'd commentated on him racing. And a gentleman called Arjun Block with a great big red Galaxy 500. So in fact, I actually contacted him and he took my good lady up the hill in his race car, which was one of the highlights of last year for her. But yeah, you literally do not know what's going to swing through that gap in the hedges next, is it? And line up and go up the hill. And yes, it's on public roads, so they do have to be public cars because they've got to do a little loop to come back. But sort of there's a bit of a blind eye to the first couple of 100 metres, isn't there? So we do see some quite entertaining getaways as well.
Well, and if I can do a gratuitous plug, you can go on HRN Chronicles on YouTube and see, and go into the vault and see some of the pieces that you two gentlemen have done from the Shere Hill Climb. Having never been there, only seeing it through the video, weird wasn't what came to mind. It was eclectic is what came to mind. And it looks like a fun event because it is a throwback to amateur motorsport where people are there because they want to be there, and they're there for fun.
I love the story of how it actually came about, because a group of petrol heads who live in or about Shere have thought for years that there is this, what is effectively a hill climb course, about a mile long, narrow country road, and wouldn't that be great to run cars up there? And they approached the local council, who said, no, never in a million years you're going to do that. And then 2012 came along and the London Olympics. The council made a pitch to the Olympic Committee and said, would you like to run the bicycle road race through the Surrey Hills? We can close the road, and that you can do that for a Sunday morning, and wouldn't that be lovely? And the Olympic Committee said, yeah, that would be good, we'll do that. So they did. And evidently, the week afterwards, all these petrol heads from Shere went and said, if you can close it for them, you can close it for us. And they had no answer to that.
Oh, that's outstanding.
And they've been running it for a decade and more since because of that. And yeah, as Paul says, you'll see a Galaxy 500 go up the hill, but then you will see 3 or 4 years ago there was I can only call it a carriage, which was designed in the 1950s as a way that you didn't quite have to walk to the shops, that this little thing powered by a motorcycle engine, and it was incredibly small because it was narrow enough to go through a cottage garden gate. and you know, it's those kind of things. It's the weird and the wonderful. It's a brilliant day out, and you can just wander around. I mean, you're not going to stand lane side, for very long. You'll come and go to that, but it's very obviously an open paddock. People are encouraged not only to stay with their cars, but also to open the bonnet, the hood, and talk to people about what it is and all that kind of thing. And I suppose it's in common with the Goodwood Revival paddock, for one day only, that is the world centre of mansplaining, because it's men walking around with slightly bored partners who will say, well, this is the Morgan three-wheeler from 1934, and it had a little V-twin engine that came out of a Jap which powered the Villiers. And you can see these partners going, oh yeah, oh God. But
I bet at the Shere Hill Climb there are less nieces.
Oh, yes.
Just
not
saying.
many nieces.
I'm thinking of taking the mansplaining thing personally, since I'm running guided tours again for the GRRC round the paddock at the Revival this year.
Oh no, that's professional mansplaining. No.
M can never accuse you of mansplaining because you are a professional mansplainer now.
The proof is in the pudding. That's what I say.
Right. That's right.
You're listening to the Historic Racing News Podcast.
Now, Jim, you've You've been having a look at the auction scene and seen what's coming and going. What's happening there?
Well, I like to watch the auction scene. Doing it by quarters this year. We primarily look at just the race cars, but the first quarter was mega because the folks at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum sold 11 cars, and that made for a very tough act to follow. But the European season opened in April, the second quarter, and that kept the overall numbers pretty strong. Sales volume was just under $245 million for the quarter. Race machine numbers were way down, though. Only 25 cars hammered, but some of them did very well. Two significant Formula One machines got a lot of attention. The top seller, as you might expect, was the ex-Michael Schumacher Ferrari F2001. It sold at a single lot auction at Monaco the weekend of the Grand Prix. The car had strong ties to the Principality. Schumacher won the Monaco Grand Prix with that chassis on his way to the 2001 World Championship. It was the last Ferrari to win at Monaco and win the championship in the same season, and it hammered for $18 million, and that was the big seller amongst the race cars. Jenson Button, his dazzling, beautiful smile enlightened even a little bit more as his Braun BGP 001 Chassis 01 sold in Miami for $3.8 million. You'll remember that car was the first of the double diffuser cars. There were only 3 built. Now, Jensen didn't drive this car, but he apparently owned it. Rubens Barrichello drove the car to 4 podiums and 9 top 10 finishes in that kind of underdog season. Now, in the States, Mecum, who's normally mostly muscle cars and things of that nature, led the way in competition car sales with 17 cars hammering in the second quarter. The majority of them were vintage NHRA drag racing machines of all categories. 3 former Indycars sold. Probably the prettiest of those was a beautiful Watson Roadster driven by Jim Rathbun in 1963 in the 500-mile race. That car sold for $275,000. Now, a couple cars with a lot of hype didn't sell. The most surprising, it was a 1965 Ford GT Roadster, and that was offered at Mecum in Indianapolis. Now, this was, you notice I didn't say GT40 because the first year the cars were just called Ford GTs, and this was the only Roadster to compete at Le Mans. So it had great pedigree. The bidding got to $7.75 million, but couldn't beat the reserve, so it did not sell. The quarter ended with an exciting sealed bid. There were 3 Ferrari Daytonas that were sold under sealed bid. One of those was a ex-NART road racer that competed 4 times at Le Mans and at Daytona with a class victory in 1975. Estimates were that all 3 of them topped $10 million. That would have pushed the second quarter race totals over $30 million. This month, it doesn't get any better. It's Monterey Car Week coming up shortly. Goodies Christie's annually has a few competition specials, and just recently, Gooding Christie's announced, and I got very excited about this one, so you guys will have to put up with my Americanism here for a moment. A very significant Indianapolis 500 race winner is going to cross the block, and it's very rare that race winners go up for auction. This is a 1972 All-American Racers Eagle Offenhauser. It's chassis 7217, and it was driven by Gordon Johncock to victory in 1973. Gurney Eagles were the cars to beat back then. This car from the pen of Roman Slobodinsky, this was the car that first used the famed gurney flap. And that's the strip that goes across the rear wing that was created, and it was actually kept a secret for over 18 months. It created a lot more downforce with no added drag, and that car is expected to top $1 million. You know, sometimes a car is, the story behind the car is better than the car itself in some ways. And Goodings has one of those as well. It's a front-wheel drive 1927 Miller Model 91. It's
a work of genius.
Indeed. It's on offer from the Mitchell Rosansky collection. Now, the car was one of and this I thought this was great in doing the research. The car is one of less than 15 examples that have been built. And you always hear one of 4, one of 5, one of less than 15. And the reason they can't actually pin the numbers down has to do a bit with this car, because the car was believed to have been, the one that's for sale is believed to have been built from 2 cars that originally raced in 1927. One of them was wrecked. And then, I love this, Phil Cowboy Red Schaefer bought the car, and he entered it, had it built, had it repaired, allegedly used chassis 4 and chassis 5 to build this car, and raced it at Indianapolis in 1928 and 1929. Then rule changes made the car obsolete. And English racer Doug Hawkes, an ex-World War I ambulance driver, Ms. Gwendolyn Stewart, used the machine to set numerous speed records ranging from 5 kilometers to 100 miles at Montlhéry in France from 1930 to 1934. The estimate for the car is $1 million, and that's cheap at twice the price, just to be able to tell that story. Unbelievable.
That's great, isn't it?
Unbelievable. Right now we're at $1.25 billion for the year in volume, and if we have another big Monterey, you can see that we might be on our way to $2 billion again this year. Now, I have full previews on HRN Chronicles. I'm doing a full Monterey preview, and also we have our full second quarter report, which is online, so you can enjoy those as you wish. So please remember to like our Facebook page. Remember to subscribe to HRN Chronicles.
There are lots of ways to keep up with historic racing news. Our podcast comes out on the first Wednesday of every month. The 2-hour show includes interviews with drivers and other personalities from years gone by, plus news of historic events like the Goodwood Revival and the Silverstone Festival. And Jim Roller keeps us up to speed on happenings stateside and looks at the activities both on and off the track in the USA.
And you can also follow us on our YouTube channel, HRN Chronicles. It's our version of a time machine. We have archive features, exclusive interviews, and behind-the-scenes stories going way back into the history of our glorious sport. Plus, we keep an eye on the latest classic and competition car auction news. It's a place where motorsports history lives.
And don't forget our amazing Facebook page. With over 1 million views a month, it is one of the leading social media channels for the historic racing fan. We feature tales from years gone by, news from around the racing world, and we also take the opportunity to flesh out the stories we cover on our podcasts with photographs and yet more background information.
If you would like to find more editions of the Historic Racing News podcast, try searching Historic Racing News wherever you get your podcasts.
The YouTube channel is simply called HRN Chronicles.
And just search Facebook for the Historic Racing News page.
Now back to the Historic Racing News podcast and Paul Tarsey.
Now, I mentioned to you about my gallivanting to the Bluebird restaurant, and that I also, just last week, went to London's ultra posh St James district, half a mile from Buckingham Palace, half a mile from Piccadilly Circus. It's just very, very posh, and it was for the awarding of the Seagrave Trophy. And the Seagrave Trophy, there is a picture on our Facebook page. People who've won Seagrave Trophy in the past include people like Sterling Moss, Lewis Hamilton, Adrian Newey, Billy Munger, Jackie Stewart, John Surtees, Alan McNish, who's won it twice. And that the thing goes, it's awarded for those with the spirit of adventure and for the outstanding demonstration of skill, courage and initiative in transportation on land, water or in the air. So it's a very, very broad spread. I mean, Andy Green won it for his land speed record stuff. Actually, because it's the Royal Automobile Club, and because it's been going since the 1930s, it should say, for those with the spirit of adventure and for the outstanding demonstration of skill, courage, and initiative in transportation on land, water, or in the air.
From the proper type of family.
That's right.
Now,
PJ, your mic's open.
Now the award this year was won by somebody that we all know and will be familiar to most of our listeners, and that was a young man called Nick Tandy, which was a significant achievement. And the reason that he got it was that he is the first man ever to have won the 4 principal 24-hour races around the world. He won Le Mans in 2015. He's won the Nürburgring 24 hours, the Spa 24 hours, the Daytona 24 hours. You getting the gist now of what it is?
Yeah.
He's also
It's called the Career Grand Slam of endurance racing.
Yeah, and nobody has ever done it before.
Nope, first one. He's the Bobby Jones of car racers.
And to top that, he won the 2007 Formula Ford Festival.
Well, there you are. I didn't know that. And he's also won, just to sort of sprinkle over the top, the Sebring 12 hours and Petit Le Mans. It was a great day. That the introduction was given by Martin Brundle, and Alan McNish also talked glowingly about Nick's career. We will be having a chat to Nick on the September show, so we'll be back with that, and so we will ask him all those difficult questions about how it works. Finally, for this edition of the Historic Racing News podcast, I think that we need a fanfare. Many people will have collected the Le Mans books. They've been mainly edited by Quentin Spurring over the years. The blue cover of the Le Mans books, which is the official Le Mans story, done by Decade, and excellent they've been. We haven't seen one since the one that covered 1999, but now, and hence the fanfare, we have, and
I'm up for a funfair.
A funfair.
Yeah,
You
but
always are.
none of those really fast rides, because at my age they don't feel good anymore.
No, they're not. No, they're not good.
Give me a stick and a ring and a duck, and I'm yours.
I think I probably have that T-shirt.
It didn't come out quite how I intended that.
But our friend, somebody who's known well to all three of us, John Brooks, has he picked up the cudgel of producing the book 4 years ago, and this book has been 4 years in the making. If you've got the other 8 Decade books with the blue cover, then you'll absolutely want this. It's brilliant, and we talked a bit about his Le Mans experiences and the book itself. Now, many people will have copies of the 8 books with the royal blue covers, which feature the Le Mans 24 hours. Each book covers a decade, and the latest edition, I'm delighted to say, covering 2000 to 2009, has recently been released by Evero Publishing. And I am delighted to welcome to the Historic Racing News podcast the author of said latest book, John Brooks. John, thank you very much for coming on. The book like this is in volumes, huge amount of work, and it's taken you an awful lot of effort to get to where we are.
Indeed. I think I nearly drove the saintly publisher Mark Hughes up the wall. We had planned 2 years and it took 4 in the end, but there's a lot to tell because it's not just about the cars at the front, the Audis, the Peugeots, etc., but really anybody who manages to get onto the grid at Le Mans has a story to tell, and it's worth relating. Some were better than others, let's leave it at that.
Over the years, probably less in let's call it your decade, but looking back over the 60s, 70s, 80s, there were some really strange, oddball things, weren't there?
Oh, God, yes. But we had one or two, even in, the Lamborghini until they got their act together, was not great. And in the decade I'm looking at now, perhaps we won't talk about the Nissan GTR LM, but anybody who attempts to go to Le Mans on a professional basis is pushing themselves hard. Having worked with teams, worked in the media, I did 36 in a row working there. There were many challenges that you would have. Security could be interesting.
I mean, you first went to Le Mans when Noah was a boy, didn't you? What was your first year?
1978. I was interested probably from about 68 onwards, and like a lot of people of that generation, took one look at the Porsche 917 and the Ferrari 512, and you just thought, wow. I got lucky and I got to see them race once in the period. But in 78, it was suggested we go to Le Mans. We'd had the year before where Porsche had, and particularly Jackie Ickx, had driven an incredible race, winning against all odds. 78 was less so for Porsche. Renault got their act together and did the job. So I went 3 years as a spectator, the last of which I had a camera that functioned as opposed to the year before. Well, actually, the camera was all right. It was the photographer the year before. He couldn't figure out how to load film properly, so nothing came out. But by then, I was already getting media passes for Formula 3 and other national stuff. I was lucky enough to get along in late 82 to Brands Hatch and watch Jackie Ickx, once again, win the World Championship by about 4 seconds. Quite an incredible achievement. So when the opportunity, and I started helping out a promising young photographer who just launched his own agency, a guy called Keith Sutton.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So I missed a couple of years at Le Mans. I went to South Africa for the Grand Prix. I think I'd had a tax rebate or something, decided to spend it. I went to Monaco a couple of times because one of my mates down the pub, his parents had a flat in Monaco and they used to get us into the Rascasse restaurant.
Wow.
I think it was about 100 quid for the weekend. If you'd probably have to add 5 or 6 noughts onto that now to go there. But sports car racing was always my thing. I mean, I covered Formula 3 during the Palmer to Senna years and enjoyed it. But endurance racing was the thing. And Group C was on a great development path. It wasn't always as brilliant as people nowadays reminisce. There were some god-awful races, but watching, going there for the first time in 84 with a pass, and the factory Porsches didn't show up. They had an argument with the ACO, I think, or with somebody, probably the ACO, and Jost managed to win. And then he repeated that the following year, amazingly. Yes, a feat he repeated in 96 and 97.
Now, the book, as I said, it covers the years 2000 to 2009. So straight 10 years. And in many ways, we could perhaps call it the Audi years. Were Audi just too good?
Yes, in some ways they were. They went away from the race in 1999 and looked hard at themselves and said, okay, what have we not done right here? And they went away and said, okay, we won't run two cars, we'll run one. And we'll have three examples there. I mean, one of the things that was maybe the foundation of Audi's success was the engine. To my knowledge, that particular 3.6 litre twin turbocharged V8 only ever suffered one engine failure in its whole career, and that was in 2000 during one of the qualifying sessions. So that was, if you like, the foundation. The other thing they did was they looked at what are the possible weaknesses. Okay, transmission, gearbox, that sort of thing. So they came up with a rally-based solution, which was to be able to change the rear end they got it down to 4.5 minutes at one stage before the ATO banned it. But I mean, you know, they spent substantial money. They used it as a marketing exercise as well as rewarding people within Audi. I mean, one fact is when they arrived in 99, I believe they sold 674,000 cars. When they left, I think in 2016 or 17, I can't remember, 16, they were on 1.6 million. Now, it's not all down to Le Mans, but certainly it raised the profile of the brand, which had already climbed with the Audi Quattro, the various Audi 200s. It was the junior prestige brand of Germany after Mercedes and BMW. But by the end of 2009, you would have said they were all fairly equal.
Yeah, indeed. Now, just remind us what the class structure was like in that decade.
Well, there were basically four classes. There were the prototypes at the top, which was intended for factory or very serious efforts, principally factories, though. So that was LMP 900, which was a 900 kilo weight, or it became LMP 1. The junior class was first known as LMP 675, so there was a 675 kilo weight limit, and then became LMP 2. The 675 created an opportunity that MG took advantage of by basically building a car with the same power to weight ratio as the Audi R8 that was winning the race. And when you put someone like Mark Blundell behind the wheel, it went pretty quickly. In GTs, we had LMGTS, which became LMGT1, and LMGT, which became LMGT2. And while they don't get the headlines, perhaps, that the Audis and the Bentleys and the Peugeots got, without them, the race would not have prospered in the way it did. The ACO made a mistake, or they let the FIA or FISA during the mid-80s almost shove GT racing into oblivion in Europe. Certainly, there was nothing. And it only came back when 28 cars started in 1992, and Michel Cosson, who'd just been appointed ACO president, realised that unless they brought GTs back, and this was prompted largely through 2 weeks after that race, Stefan Rotella arrived with the Venturi Trophy and 55 cars on the grid with lots of very rich men. So GT racing is something that the public can relate to. Okay, no one thinks that you can go and buy a Corvette or a Ferrari 550 Maranello or even a 996 GT3 Porsche for the road and it'll be anything like the car on the track, but the foundations are there, the DNA.
I'm not sure that I agree with you there. I think that certainly quite a few people on the terraces would think that that 911, that Corvette, they have metaphorically taken off the hubcaps and given it a few stickers, and away it goes. Do you think people value those GTs? Very highly sophisticated racing cars.
Indeed. I mean, if you're taking a basic road car and converting it for action on track, then you're putting a hell of a lot of work into trying to get round the compromises that you have to make. When you're building a road car, you're not thinking of the ultimate performance or where what the front to rear weight distribution is, etc., etc. But essentially, the battles between Corvette racing, first off with Viper, Oreca Viper that is, and then the arrival of ProDrive with the Ferrari and then with the Corvette, that kept people on the edge of their seats. Now, a lot of this is also down to the fact that the public could understand what was going on. First off, there was Radio Le Mans. And the people, as you know only too well, who were commentating on that would be aware that there were 4 classes and they would keep people informed. Then the ACO cottoned on copying the American Le Mans series by first off lighting up the actual number on the side of the car and then introducing the light system. So you had 3 lights. There were 4 colours, so 1 for each class. And if you were first, second or third, you had your lights there. And that helped to, if you like, give the public an understanding of what the class battles were.
You said your first Le Mans was 78. I was 12 months after you. My first was in 79. And yeah, if you went out on the circuit at that sort of time, you saw a pair of headlights come towards you and the car went past and then it went dark again. And that I can remember priding myself on being able to identify at least some of the cars by the way the headlights looked as they came towards you. But now it's so completely different.
Quite. And the whole thing has changed, obviously, with the communications. People can hold a screen in front of themselves now instead of carrying a telephone wire behind them. And, we've become much more sophisticated in that side of things. And also, I think the public, the audience now demands more communication, more understanding of things. When I went in 78, we had a rough idea what was going on because it looked, the French got very excited every time a Renault went past the start-finish line. So we took it they must be winning. And there were broadcasts as well, Bob Constanduris and others like that would come on and would do live broadcasts over the tannoy, but sometimes you could hear it and sometimes you couldn't.
Oh, yes, I can remember standing underneath a telegraph pole somewhere with a loudspeaker attached, trying to make the notes. But, it's changed, and good or bad, right or wrong, it's changed. I mean, you mentioned about the GT classes, and I appreciate very strongly that they're much more than just making up the numbers. And there are some great stories, and I love in your book, there's some great stories about GT cars, and you look at ultra professional teams like Corvette, like Aston Martin, stroke ProDrive, and then you look at people like the gallant TVR team. As you were doing your research, did you end up with a favourite?
Ooh, there's a question. Well, favourite might not be the right word, but one of the things I most found was the levels of respect between the teams. Things like when Peugeot were supposed to win, say in 2008, and they didn't. They were 5 seconds a lap faster at least, but they were up against an Audi team that realised they couldn't win on track, so they would win, in the pits. And they would hope for rain, which came, and they had one of the strongest driving trios that's ever existed, Alan McNish, Tom Christensen, and Dindo Capello. But after the race, there's a lot of celebrating and beer going on in the Audi area, and then they invited the Peugeot mechanics in and saluted them. And the reverse happened the following year. And it was a similar story down in Corvette racing and ProDrive, or Aston Martin racing as it was. And there was a high level of respect between all of these people. And having been part of a team for a few years, you soon realise just how hard the guys work. I mean, it's crazy. And even the smallest, weakest team, and there have been a few, they pull off miracles just to get there. So being a member of the media was quite easy compared with what the guys had to do.
I can remember when I was working with the Radio Le Mans team during the period of your golf. And you think, yeah, we definitely have it easy, very much so.
As I said, there is a level of respect. And I think what it is that I always felt, even if we didn't win our class, and we did one year, and we should have done another couple, but things happen, just getting to the finish. If you look on the faces of the guys who work on the cars, or even the people who run the hospitality or whatever, they've all pushed themselves to the limit, and it feels like you've won. It feels like victory.
You also talk in your book, quite rightly, about the people who are standing there on the terraces in the grandstands, who in many ways make the event, because in the same way as Wimbledon attracts people who know nothing about tennis, or Royal Ascot spectators are not necessarily avid horse racing fans, the crowd at Le Mans is different from most of the motor races, and they are very much part of the atmosphere, aren't they?
I would totally agree with that. I can only imagine, perhaps, because there's that feeling you walk through the gate at 7 o'clock on the Saturday morning. You've already been there a week, so you're worn out. Possibly through over refreshment earlier on in the week. If you've been there as a fan, you'll have been camping, so it might have been a bit hot and thirsty to be out there. But there's a sense of anticipation. You get the warm-up goes, and that happens, and suddenly there's support races on, and there is a climbing sense of anticipation. And the only other places I could imagine that would be, one of which I haven't been to, which is Indianapolis. And I would imagine that race day would be quite a platform there. Sebring is similar in a way to Le Mans, because people who went there in the 50s then took their children, then their grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And there's a sense of community there, which you also get at Le Mans. People go to the same campsites. They may not see the other people for a year or so, but they all sort of gel together because they've got this common interest in endurance racing. And, the Le Mans nearly perished in the 90s. And through the wisdom and the common sense of Cosson and his crew, and then Plassard took over, and now Fillon, they've managed to create a world championship. They've created platforms so as people can run businesses and have fun going racing. We have a World Endurance Championship. We have whatever it's called this week, IMSA, American Le Mans Series. We've got an Asian Le Mans Series. We've got a European Le Mans Series. Not only that, Cosson brought the bikes back. They disappeared. And the motorcycle side of it is very important. He also managed to offload the circuit to the local authorities and various sort of bodies in the La Sarthe region. And suddenly the ACO was not anywhere near as in danger of collapsing as it had been at the beginning of the 90s. So yes, the atmosphere is completely different to most other events.
I've been on the ferry on the way back. I think of one particular time when I was working for Radio Le Mans, and I had to be back in the UK for Monday, and so I came overnight on the ferry on Sunday night out of Caen, and so I was there in the queue for the ferry in my Radio Le Mans liveried Audi, because they were sponsoring the station, and inevitably a few people came up and said the nice things that you would expect them to say. And there were three blokes who came up. They said, "Were you on the radio?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you have a good time? Enjoy the race?" And they said, "Yeah, we had a fantastic time. Loved every minute of it. It was absolutely fantastic. Brilliant race. Met new people. It was absolutely fabulous. Oh, by the way, who won?" And I thought, okay, you've had a good time.
Yes, quite. Well, there is an element of that there, and we saw the British have their challenges from the Danes and the Dutch, certainly for refreshment and enthusiastic support of their heroes, Jan Lammers or Jan Magnussen, and of course Mr. Le Mans himself, TK. It was strange though, writing about it all again. I mean, it brought memories flooding back, and I just realised how lucky I was to have been there as a small cog in this giant machine, and I was lucky to be able to scrape a living out of it somehow, and the races. Some races were better than others. Sometimes the weather would either be too hot or too wet, or both. It's not quite Spa level where you get every season within a 6-hour race. Maybe not snow, but everything else.
Yeah, but certainly it can get close to that point. And you say that you've completed this, and many congratulations for the book. And you're working on the next one, aren't you?
Indeed. I've been drawing up tables today. I've done the data tables for the 10 years. Now, shall we say, the source material, like the annual, there's the odd mistake in it. So the best thing to do is to go to the Alcamel site and just get all the timesheets and everything from there. There are anomalies you find in it, and there are mysteries that you'll never explain. I'm then going to go on and do the 10-year tables, the list of drivers and all that stuff, because I think it's a good way of getting yourself refamiliarized with the decade. So I've got another 15 months, I'm told by the publisher, to have this ready. Not sure. But Mark Hughes has been incredibly supportive, as has the whole Evro team. A whole load of people. You send questions to people, and almost all answer. From it might be, for example, George Howard Chappell or John Manchester from Zytec. I'll send him a note saying, "What was that engine type?" And very patiently they reply, and they help out. There's been a lot of people who've been generous with their knowledge and their time. And the other thing was, I had it slightly easier in one way because we had a thing called Daily Sports Car, which was effectively around from 2002 onwards. And Malcolm Cracknell had who was the founder. He had all manner of information that even the likes of the Gary Watkins and the Andrew and Michael Cotton would struggle, because he had two guys in Le Mans who would pop into the circuit once or twice a week, and they would talk with Poissonneau or Perdry or Gachet, whoever. And you learn so much from all of that. The problem it creates then is that you write too much.
But yeah, I think with a book like this, where you have so much information, that's not going to be a criticism that anybody's going to throw at you. One of the things I love about your book is that you can flick through it while you're eating your cornflakes, and you can say, oh yeah, I remember that, and I remember that car, and I remember that race. But also the amount of detailed information that you can get down to very quickly and very easily, and just so that people know, every year is tabulated separately. So you go in and you can say, well, what was that particular car that I remember going off at the Porsche curves at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you can find it. And I take my hat off to you, because I have nowhere near the attention to detail that you must have to be able to put it all together.
Well, there was partly fear as well. If you look at what Quentin Spurring managed in his 7 previous volumes, 7 or 8, I can't remember, he set a standard that if I can get somewhere near it, I'd be very happy. I mean, I also really enjoy research and finding out things I didn't know at the time, or correcting stories or impressions, because things do get said and they get written, and then suddenly you find actually that's not right at all. And I was incredibly grateful for the opportunity to do this. I can warn anybody who's thinking of doing these sort of books, you don't make much money at it. For the amount of hours put in, I think I was earning about 3p an hour. And you've got to be, you've got to go back to the last 2 centuries ago for that to be a meaningful wage.
Yeah, and you had to go up a chimney for that.
Yes, exactly. And I'm a bit larger than most chimneys are.
You and me both, mate. It's a great book. Thoroughly recommend it. I know, as I said at the top of this interview, that many people will have the other 8 editions already, and this will be a vital addition to that collection. The book is available from everopublishing.com. It's available from good motoring booksellers, and of course it's available online. It costs £70, and it's worth every penny, even if you only look through it over your cornflakes. But if you want something which gives you a highly detailed look at that decade, it's very, very well worth it. John, thank you for coming on the show, and thank you also for writing this great book.
Thank you for your kind words. It'll motivate me to get on with the next book after we finish.
Right, off you go then. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. We've packed a huge amount in with what we've put on the show this time. Thank you to Don Wales, Tim Mayer, Mario Andretti, who spoke to Paul Jurd, the Goodwood Road Racing Club, John Brooks. Thank you to all of those people. My thanks must also go, of course, to Paul Jurd, and the man who not only shares his pearls of wisdom, but also...
Too kind.
Yeah, I won't do it again.
Hey, thank you.
But also produces the show, and that's Jim Roller. We'll be back in September, when we'll be looking forward to the Shere Hill Climb and to the Goodwood Revival. We'll have some more book reviews, and we'll look at how Silverstone has changed over the years. Oh, and we'll have a full-length interview by Paul Jurd with a chap called Nigel Mansell.
I was going to ask you, who did that interview?
It's gone from my mind.
Yeah, friend of the stars, that's me.
Anyway, that's it for now. So we'll be back next month. Thank you to Jim, thank you to Paul, thank you to everybody, and thank you particularly to you. If you have been, thank you very much indeed for listening.